For us to approach the experience of the African American community from the standpoint of caste would be a case of, let's say, a reverse imposition. Okay, just as it would be equally unfair to approach issues relating to caste from the aspect of race from an African American perspective. Okay.
So one question that so I think most of our viewers are coming from the U.S. Many of them may have been born and brought up in the U.S. and sort of their knowledge of Hinduism or India and its traditions may come through the lens of their own parents and maybe the media that they consume outside of their own families. And I think in light of that, a part of the sort of political and sort of social storm going on in the U.S. has come with it, has brought lots of awareness and education toward things like race in the U.S., which lots of people in my generation definitely are becoming more and more educated on. Along with that, I think there's also a great focus on sort of expanding your sort of view of society to those that aren't just in your country. For instance, lots of education going around sort of caste issues in India or other kind of issues that may be going on.
Right.
How can we, as Indians, Hindus, anyone in the U.S., sort of take that decolonial sort of mentality to really understand what's going on? Or, how do we know how to process such information when, we're only getting it from maybe one side or so one select group of sources?
The BLM movement, which is going on at this point in the US, its relevance to India. And the one thing that I realized is that the mistake that we make, both as Hindu Americans in the US and as Indians or Hindus in India, is that we try and map our respective worldviews and our respective thoughts on the other society. Okay, which is exactly the kind of tendency that decoloniality resists, and it says don't do that. Okay, you understand a certain movement and you understand a certain reaction in the context of that particular place. Okay, and you try and do justice to it, because then you try and understand it in terms defined by the people or the stakeholders who are directly affected by it. Okay, so what would that mean? For us to approach the experience of the African American community from the standpoint of caste would be a case of, let's say, a reverse imposition. Okay, just as it would be equally unfair to approach issues relating to caste from the aspect of race from an African American perspective. Okay, because no two experiences are the same. So while some might focus on the consequence, what makes the most difference is the cause and not just the effect. Okay, because it is the cause that tells you what are the underlying triggers. And once you understand the cause, you're in a much better position to ideate with respect to the solution. Because you see, it's not enough to understand that a certain person suffers from a fever and the body temperature is just skyrocketing. You need to understand what has caused it, because not all forms of fever have the same kind of treatment. Okay, you need to know what is the root and what is the underlying issue. Okay, assuming that there is a certain instance of exclusion, you will have to ask yourself whether exclusion is the intended cause or is it the inadvertent effect. Okay, because if it is the intended cause and it is based on prejudice, you land up at the conclusion of discrimination directly. Okay, but if that particular exclusion has a certain reason, is limited by time, space, and other considerations, then that exclusion can either be selection or it can be for the purposes of finding the best possible outcome. So since exclusion itself has multiple layers, and one of the layers being discrimination, it translates to the simple position that not all forms of exclusion is discrimination. I'm just using this as an example to basically come out with the position that it would be utterly ahistoric and unscholarly to understand caste-related issues in India without understanding the underpinning triggers or understanding its history. As ahistoric and unscholarly it would be to understand to impose an Indian view on the African American experience. Okay, Because you see, reservations are given on the basis of caste in India for a different reason. And affirmative action as employed in the US is very different for a different reason altogether. Okay? Because the is based on clear racial differences and certain racial policies and race-driven policies. Okay? To use the concept of race and to use the concept or the prism of race or the lens of race for the Indian society or the indigenous society is to assume that it is composed of multiple races, which is unscientific, which has yet not been established by science. Okay, so the Aryan invasion theory, which is the popular reference point when it comes to caste-based discussions in India, people don't even know that the Aryan invasion theory was posited by a foreigner, by a colonizer, and by those people who believed in the colonizer's point of view. Now, what has happened and what is extremely unfortunate is that all scholarship that revolves around Indian society, especially around the issue of caste, it traces its origins to records and the understanding of the colonizer who looked at the Indian society as a savage, barbaric society in the need for reform. And Rudyard Kipling, who is effectively known for his authorship of The Jungle Book, saw the Indian society as a white man's burden to bear and reform and civilize. Okay? Unfortunately, this very literature has become the reference point to understand caste-based issues in India. Okay? And decoloniality effectively says, even if caste is not an ideal system, not a perfect system, is it fair to actually look at this particular system through the lens of the colonizer who always had a vested interest in portraying this particular society as a barbaric society in the need of a civilizing, healing touch? Okay? So when the colonizer wants to justify every atrocity that he's committed on this particular society, he's going to create a justification on the basis of saying what? This society was such a regressive, backward society, and it's a society which lacks morals, has no kind of moral anchor, and therefore my presence is the only thing that has effectively civilized them and shown them the light. Okay, so the Gospelian messianic approach of the colonizer is something that people must be aware of when they look at Indian history. Okay, so for instance, any example of, or let's say any allegation of patriarchy or misogyny with respect to the Indian society, frankly, would be fundamentally ahistoric for multiple reasons. Because this civilization has seen a journey of at the very least 7,000 years, not 5,000 years, 7,000 years at the very least. Over a period of 7,000 years, is it possible to say that a society's approach has been entirely monolithic? It is bound to go through multiple phases. And when it goes through multiple phases, it is not entirely influenced by dynamics which happen within the particular society. When invasions take place, then the society reacts in a certain fashion. And the nature of invasion and the kind of interventions that take place in that particular society, the society responds in a certain fashion. Assume for a moment that your society is invaded by a particular group which believes that the women who are captured as part of, let's say, war booty, so to speak, must be treated as slaves, okay, and must be treated as inferior, subhuman creatures. Automatically, the society creates an, let's say, a response mechanism or a defense mechanism to protect that vulnerable aspect of their society, which is seen as war booty by the invading culture, so to speak. Okay, so these are certain aspects which I believe are extremely important, and that's why decoloniality in the Indian context is so relevant, because this is perhaps one of the few living civilizations which have continued with their unbroken traditions and which constantly are, whose traditions are constantly looked at from the standpoint of, let's say, an Abrahamic practice or a Judeo-Abrahamic tradition. As unfair as it would be to look at a Judeo-Abrahamic religious practice or a societal tradition from the standpoint of a Hindu vantage point, it would be equally unfair to apply a Judeo-Abrahamic approach to a Hindu tradition or a Hindu way of life. Okay, so there are multiple ways of life. The concept of morality is fundamentally a diverse universe. Okay, so if one golden standard is employed as, let's say, the standard for global human rights, okay, to say that there is only one definition, there is only one yardstick, and there is only one metric, and all those metrics and benchmarks and yardsticks will be decided without participation of native societies or indigenous societies, which have suffered colonialism, okay, then you continue to perpetuate the same colonizing mentality, because you're telling me that I don't have the same right as you to participate in a discussion on what is right and what is wrong on a question of ethics.